We are in the middle of negotiating an awesome big deal. Got some big takeaways actually, but I feel like we've not talked about negotiation much. Negotiation is a really, really important topic.
Yeah, what kind of big deal? What kind of big deal you're talking about, and how did you start off the negotiation?
Yeah, this one's a mobile home park over in the Midwest, and it's funny because whenever I dive into these things, I'm like, I always have all these like tactics come back to me, but we don't always talk about them. We don't always like dive in. So one of the things I've noticed, and I'm just like starting to list them off, is like the importance of building a relationship. I know, Gabe, you talk about this a lot. It's interesting because like a negotiation shouldn't be, in my opinion, like a hostile activity. Like the way I look at it is like it's a partnership between the buyer and the seller. How do we build a relationship, and not a bullshit relationship either, an authentic relationship? In fact, this guy that we're working with and negotiating with, he's probably going to be a friend for a long time. We might buy more parks from him or do different kinds of business. So I think the best way to open up negotiations is like be a human, first of all. Like get out of the, I've got to be a hard-nosed negotiator and I've got to get everything I want. I think it's a push and take. And I think building a really good relationship sits at the core, at the very center of every single negotiation going forward. Now, what does that mean? Building a good relationship, I think, means a lot of things, but one of the things it means is just like getting on the phone and getting to know somebody, or getting in person and getting to know somebody. Gabe, you mentioned that all the time. I think that not only finding deals is you don't only find deals through relationships, but you're able to come to an agreement to where both parties win when you're able to build that relationship. And so I've spent a lot of time with this gentleman, building a relationship. And again, it's not bullshit. Like this guy's going to be probably, hopefully a friend for a lot of years. And so that's the very first thing that comes to mind, is building that relationship. Now, you're able to, as you build a relationship, you're able to cash in your chips later on, right? You've got some relationship equity that you can lean back on and say, hey, why don't we do this? Or how do we adjust this? Or how do we go forward together? And then making it a collaboration versus hey, here's what we need or else. I hate that mentality. And I think that's been popularized as like, oh, you got to be this hard-nosed, crazy negotiator and hostile. I'll tell you, if you're like that, you're going to turn up people's egos, and that's a problem. Now you have new problems. So for me, it's like build a relationship, create a collaborative environment and a friendship to where you can go close this deal, and each one of you is sort of giving and taking along the way.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I mean, it's, the topic may be negotiation, but it does start with relationships. I think back to some of the past sellers who've carried financing for me, then became my private money lender. Like I see them now, and I have one woman, like she just gives me a big hug and she's like, I feel like you're part of my family. And it's
because you're a friend, it's like,
yeah. Done business together for a long time. There's like years worth of, just trust and conversations. And, I think that in business, like hearing you say that, Mitch, it's like, I also think people have this idea that you have to be this hard-nosed, show up in a suit with a briefcase and like either sign this contract or sign this contract. And it's not like that. I mean,
that's Hollywood. That's entertainment. That's not,
No, but it was it was popularized. I mean, you talk about Lee Iacocca and some of the people, some of the leaders that were idolized in the past, and it was very much hard-nosed, shrewd, I win, you lose, art of the deal, those types of things. So yeah, I mean, I do agree that it's, and I think Mitch taught me this all the time. I mean, you build that rapport early with the seller, let's say in this example, and there's always going to be a hair on a deal. Like there is right now. We're looking at some sewer stuff. We have some questions around timelines. And had we not engaged with this seller, Mitch, because he's the one that's built a really good rapport with this guy, and know who his grandkids are and know what his history is, and had there not been that relationship, and you just like get attorneys involved. My attorney is going to talk to your attorney, and we're going to push back, and we're going to shit falls apart that way. And we say this all the time, deals are not found, they're made. And I would probably say we talk about got to be creative, got to think outside the box. I think Ryan Bowden was talking about a friend of ours, like if you think you're being creative, you're not creative enough. But I'll tell you, but to facilitate all that creativity, having a relationship's big. Like Mitch literally said today, we actually had a call right before this. The seller said, hey, like how can the three of us sit down and figure out a way to put this together. And it sort of became this, we're on one team and the appraiser and the bank are on the other team. And how can we, and it was very natural and it worked really well, which is surprising. Again, every time Mitch comes up with good ideas, I shake my head because in real life, Mitch is a complete asshole. He talks a nice game to each other.
Mitch, last week we were recording. Travis was talking so much shit and you weren't even here to defend yourself. I stuck up. I said nice about you every time Travis would talk shit.
Well, when you have a low sense of security and sense of self, then of course you got to run around talking shit. So, no,
hurt people. I mean,
hurt people. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I want to hurt it. I want to add as well. Like, I think a lot of investors, especially newer investors, younger investors, think they have to know everything. They think they have to come in as the expert negotiator. They think they have to come in as the person that's trying to convince the seller to sell them their property, and even though, we're three talking heads right now on a podcast and we can do our fair share of talking.
Number one real estate podcast in the world, by the way.
The number one real estate podcast.
That's pretty cool. We hit that. Yeah.
Yes. Years ago. It's as much as we can talk, a lot of the negotiation I've done when I look back is I ask really simple questions and I just like shut up and I listen. So it's like asking a question, shutting up and listening, asking a question, shutting up and listening. And it's when a seller talks, for one, they feel more comfortable because you're asking them genuine questions about whether it's about themselves, about the property, about their investing, whatever it is. They start to feel more comfortable, but you also get a lot more information. You don't have to come in as this know-it-all investor thinking you're going to talk them into selling you their property. They want to sell their property. It's the old adage of like, people want to sell, but they don't want to be sold, right? Like give a seller the opportunity to do that.
Well, and I think when you hear, a seller really pushing back on you, or there's some hostility, or there's some, and we've had this with, appraisers or a seller or a banker or whoever that is, whatever stakeholder inside the transaction, they're pushing back on you and they're getting a little bit flared. You can hear, you can sense the ego, you can sense the hostility. I think that's the first sign that you do not have a strong enough relationship with that individual. And instead of pushing back on those specific terms or whatever of the deal, it's time to build more of a relationship. And I lean into that. And I lean into exactly what you just said, Gabe. It's time to start asking questions beyond the terms that you're fighting over and starting to dig in and trying to connect with that person as a human. Because most humans actually really do want to connect. And when you put out that olive branch, I was talking to the appraiser this week and he started the conversation by basically yelling at me. And at one point he yelled at me and said something about being in the Marine Corps. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my opening. I've got to get past this bullshit conversation and just ask him one question. And my one question was, what did you do in the Marine Corps? And he stopped in his tracks and we talked for 45 minutes about his past in the Marine Corps and his experience. And I was in the Navy and Travis is, who was in the deal as well, was in the Air Force. He thought that was cool because he's a vet as well. All these things are totally unrelated to the deal. Completely unrelated to the deal, but totally on track with building a relationship. At the end of the conversation, it ended warm and it ended good. And we were able to sort of build some rapport and get past our differences. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're trying, there's a lot of moving parts of this deal. We're trying to understand where this appraiser's head's at on value. Because unfortunately in these deals, a lot of times the power is given to these appraisers, right? And so Mitch, that was the objective, right? I wasn't on the call, but that was like, where do you think this is coming in at? Because the appraisal's coming in late. There's a timeline, and the guy like lit Mitch up, right? Mitch, when you were because we left him a voicemail asking that question, and he lit Mitch up immediately. And then 30, 45 minutes later, he's giving you more of an inclination of what he thinks it's going to be at. But he started the call out with like, I'm not telling you that. No way, no how, not going to happen. And he didn't come out. I mean, he was within his parameters as an appraiser and his fiduciary duty to the bank. But we got a better understanding of where his head was at, which is what we really needed.
Yeah, and to be honest, I built a relationship with him. He'll probably be a friend of mine. I think it goes back to the relationship and then working together because in the end, man, everyone has the same goal. The buyer wants to buy, the seller wants to sell, the appraiser wants to get paid, the bankers, they want to close, they have goals. Everyone has the same goal, but sometimes people inside the transaction forget that and they start butting heads on smaller issues. And I think it's like, how do we get past these small issues, build genuine relationships? The other thing too is this is a small world, man. You start dealing with, multifamily or MHP or apartments or stores, whatever industry you're in, and you're there for a couple of years, you're going to run into all the same people. So you cannot go in swinging and burning relationships. It's a small family of investors and third party advisors.
Well, you also see these guys that come in and they're taught to come in, get it under contract, and then just retrade.
Yeah, well,
for no reason.
That might work once or twice, but not.
Yeah, like we were at a park in contract. There was no reason for them to retrade at the end. I think they cited like, oh, the homes are kind of old, but at the end of the day, it was an all tenant-owned home park, and they retraded like $500,000 like at the last hour. And I'm sure that someone taught these guys that maybe in some seminar, and we were just like, nah. Screw you. Bye. We don't need to sell.
We're never going to take their contract again. I mean,
and same with the broker, our listing agent who specializes in MHP. He's national. He's well known. He'll never work with these guys again. Like, don't be so transactional to where you're trying to just squeeze the last drop of blood out of these people and you forget about it. And I believe in social capitalism, right? We've talked about this before. Not socialism, Mitch. Open up your ears. Social capitalism. And I believe that's where everybody wins. Like you mentioned it. The appraiser wants to
call me out. You call me out. Like I'm a socialist. That's what you think.
Yeah. Well, Mitch gets excited when you talk about communism and socialism.
Well, I have a heart, and then Travis is like, no, screw baristas. He's just
shut up. But you talk about the appraiser wants to get his fee. The bankers want to deploy capital and make a return for themselves. Yeah, we want to close. The seller wants to close. And I think the tenants want a nice place to live. The investors want a good return on their investment. I mean, I think every deal, everybody needs to win. I guess I'll pose a question to you guys. Have you read the book? Is it like Never Split the Difference? I have not actually read that book, and I probably should. That's a big negotiating book. Do you guys what's your philosophy on Never Split the Difference? Meaning, like a lot of times if someone's like, hey, I want a $5,000 credit. You're like, I don't want to give you a $5,000 credit. And they're like, well, how about we meet in the middle? Like,
I have read the book. I have read the book, but long before I read the book, kind of going back to actual negotiation. And I've shared this so many times. It's nothing to do with the book. I just found because I didn't know what I didn't know, I naturally had curiosity and asked a lot of questions. But then I'd always find the one thing that was most important to the seller. And I would go home and go, how can I give that to them? How can I give them the one thing that's most important to them and still make the deal work for me? As you guys know, a lot of my early deals, all my early deals, really were seller finance deals. And they were all no money down seller finance deals, right? And it was asking the question of like, hey, what kind of terms would you be interested in? And I shared that this week. Like we were at another mastermind, and there's a lot of real estate investors there. And there was a guy that is wanting to negotiate a seller finance deal. And he's like, what kind of terms? How do I negotiate this? How do I convince him? How do I get him to do it? And I'm like, you don't, man. You just ask the question, hey, what kind of terms are you interested in? And then shut the fuck up and see what they say. And so those early negotiations, when I look back, I asked the questions, and based on the responses they gave me, I would always go home and go, can I give them that thing that seemed to be most important to them? Can I give them that one thing and maybe negotiate everything else that didn't seem as important? Okay, they want a specific price. Can I give them that price if they're negotiable on the down payment, on the interest rate, on the term length, all these other areas? And a lot of that just came from asking questions and listening. And so I'm not even negotiating against them. I'm actually negotiating with them. Hey, I like the property. The price is fine. Can we adjust these, the interest rate, the down payment to make this deal work for us?
But what if it's a very binary thing? Like I understand, like even when I was in my telecom days and I was negotiating with a client to sell them a new phone system, like what's the most important thing to you? Like that's key. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think a lot of people forget that because a lot of times it's not price. A lot of times it could be, you also say this, it could be terms, price could be something emotional, right? Like, oh, we want you to take care of our manager or our tenants, or Sally in space number 6 could use free rent for another 24 months or whatever. But I mean, if it's very binary, like I just ran into this deal today, like, and I'm not a house flipper. My wife and I did one house flip, and probably will never do it again because it was kind of fun, but it was also irritating. But we're supposed to close today, and the lady is like, I've been thinking about that roof. And I think that we really want a $5,000 credit, like last day, right? By the way, don't do that shit if you're a buyer. But at the same time, like I'm just like kind of done with this thing. So my question is, do you go back and say, there's no emotional, there's no terms. It's just, we want a $5,000 credit. Yes or no? Do you say no? Do you say yes? Or do you say, I'll meet you in the middle at $2,500?
I think it depends on the deal. It depends on you. I mean, I never want to be a desperate buyer, and I never am. Right. So it's a matter of like when I hear that, like I think about like most deals, I'm willing to walk away. Willing to walk away. So in that situation, like, do you want to give a $5,000 credit? Is it worth, like, do you want the deal so bad? Like, is it worth losing the deal over $5,000? Maybe.
No. And my in that particular instance, and a lot of people forget this, I'm like, just the carrying costs for another month would eat that up. Like putting it back on the market during the holidays, like I'm just like, whatever. And there's also the emotional piece. I don't really care.
Position that you can walk away. I've said no to, all sorts of sellers, and then they come back and they're a lot more reasonable. And I think another piece to that is, when you're negotiating, like not every deal is going to work for you and the seller. I've looked at so many properties and made offers, and me and the seller are so far off on what the terms are. It's not like, how much time do you want to put into a deal that's not actually a deal? Like the price sucks. They want, 50% down, 500% interest rate or whatever. Like I'm not going to waste my time either negotiating if I'm so far off. Like I'm willing to walk away, and I'll go focus my time and energy on negotiating the deal that, we built that rapport and seem to be a little bit closer on terms.
Well, there's also a lot of like, when you look at deals, there's a lot of things going on. So like there's the entire deal, right? And then there's all these little things inside the deal. So the $5,000, that's a good example. We had a park we were closing in Wisconsin a while back, and the seller called me and she's all up in arms, right? She starts the conversation kind of like aggressive. And she's like, look, I've got these deposits and I need to collect the deposits because I feel like I earned those, and all this stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it was like 15 grand in deposits. Okay. Well, for me, I always go back to this like this saying: be willing to lose battles to win the war. So for me, I'm willing to lose battles inside the negotiation, inside the transaction, to win the war. This park has like $1 to $1.5 million upside. So do you think I'm going to be really up in arms about about 15K already? So who cares about 15K, right? So I go back to her and I say, hey, slow down for a second. Let me go back to my team. I think we can make this happen for you. She's like, no way. And I'm like, just relax. I think we got this. Okay, 15K. I could break the whole thing apart and get an attorney involved and look at the PSA and go, oh, per the contract and all the bullshit. Or I could just say, look, let's lose a couple battles to win the war. And we did. We gave her the 15K. I think it's even less than that, but whatever it was. So when I look at your house flip, I go, well, how much are you making on the house, right? Oh, I don't know what you're making on the house. Probably a decent amount. Are you willing to lose the 5K? For me, that's a conversation. I go, look, let's lose the battle or lose part of the battle to win the war. So you go back and you go, hey, we can't do the 5K. I do want to come your way. Like, what if we came your way $3,000? It's last minute, whatever that is.
That's exactly what we did. Yeah.
And who cares? It's $3,000. You still won the war. And so for me, it's like, how do I give the seller wins or the buyer wins, depending on what side of the transactions I'm on, and give them multiple wins? Who cares? Get rid of your ego as long as you're winning the entire deal. So like the deal we're looking at now has $1 million upside, I think, right? Something like that. And so willing to lose these battles along the way, nitpicky stuff, to win the war. And I think that's an important piece too, because then the seller feels like, or the buyer feels like you're giving back, you're coming their way. They feel like they've got a big win off of $3,000 when totally you're winning a lot more than that. Like, I think there's a give take there.